Good morning. In yesterday's Devo, Pastor Ken talked about how even though it was Easter Sunday, he didn't really feel like worshiping. He just wasn't making the connection. He went on to say that despite how he felt, he knew that God was present, God was real, God was active, and ready to meet him right where he was at. I can't tell you how many times as a pastor I didn't feel like being at church. All of this reminded me that Christ didn't feel like going to the cross. As a matter of fact, Scripture says that he prayed to his Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass before me. Christ himself, knowing the mission, knowing what his Father had asked him, still did not feel like he was ready to take the cross. There comes a point in our Christian faith that there are going to be many times where we don't feel like doing something that we know God is leading us to do. It got me to thinking, what happens when we press in and press on with the things God is asking us to do, but we don't feel like doing? What can be accomplished? Now, I think about Joshua being asked by the Lord to march around Jericho so that the walls would fall and that the city would be given to them. I had to think how exhausting that actually might be. That one lap around an entire city, and we don't know how big it is. We just know that it is a city filled with an army, filled with men, women, and children. So that sounds like work. But he wasn't asked to do it once on one day. He was asked to do it once for 6 days in a row, and on the seventh day to march around the city 7 times. Even if Joshua had no problem doing this, think about his army that's being asked to march with him, that maybe they didn't feel like it. And certainly on the 7th day, 7 times around an entire city, I would have to imagine that some of them didn't feel like doing it. As we know, on the 7th day, the 7th time around the city, Joshua would let them know to give a war cry that would cause the walls of the city to fall. And that's exactly what happened. The walls fell. Despite how they felt, they still knew they needed to follow through with the command that God had given them. And by doing so, they were given the city, they were able to conquer over their enemies, and they were able to finish the promise that God had set for them all along. Moses didn't feel like being God's chosen spokesperson to help set free the nation of Israel. I'm sure Noah thought he had better things to do than to spend 100 years of his life building a boat when all he could see, as far as he could see, was dry land. And I'm sure the disciples didn't feel like risking their lives time and again, but they realized that the mission was greater than their feelings. So again, I ask you, what happens when we step in, we press on beyond what we feel and allow God to do in us and through us what his will was all along? What amazing things will transpire? As for me, I'm going to find out. Have a blessed day.